The first time I saw him, I thought my heart had skipped a beat. It wasn't a movie, it wasn't some fairy tale, it was just a crowded street on a sunny morning. I was holding a coffee cup, struggling with my bag, when a stranger caught my falling book before it touched the ground. He smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached his eyes, and in that moment something inside me whispered, "This is the beginning." "Careful," he said, handing the book back. "Looks like your whole life is in this bag." I laughed nervously. "Maybe it is," he tilted his head. "Then I guess I just saved your life." It was a silly thing to say, but it stayed with me the entire day. That stranger with his calm voice and kind eyes had entered my world without knocking. And slowly he began to stay. Our meetings were simple at first. Random encounters that felt like fate was playing matchmaker. A cafe, a bookstore, a park bench. Each time his smile was the same, and each time I felt myself falling deeper. He wasn't just handsome. He had this way of listening, like every word I said mattered. One evening, when the sky turned golden, he walked beside me in silence. Then he stopped, turned, and looked right into my eyes. "I don't believe in coincidences," he said. "I believe in choices. So let me choose." "Let me choose you." The world froze. My chest tightened. And before I could reply, he gently held my hand, waiting. My lips trembled, but the words came out like they had been waiting for years. Yes. That yes changed everything. From then on, my life became a dream. He brought flowers without reason. He called me late at night just to hear my voice. He wrote little notes and left them in my bag, on my mirror, on my pillow. Notes that said things like, "Forever begins with us," or "I'm lucky you said yes." My friends teased me, saying it was too perfect, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt alive, loved, safe. He wasn't afraid to talk about the future either. One night, under the stars, he whispered, "One day I'll marry you, and that day will be the beginning of our happily ever after." Tears filled my eyes as I buried my face against his chest. "You promise?" He lifted my chin, his gaze steady. I promise, and I believed him. Our wedding was straight out of a storybook. The white dress, the vows, the kiss that sealed everything. When he held my hand and we walked down the aisle together, smiling as the crowd clapped and cheered, I thought no love could ever be as strong as ours. That night, when the world had gone quiet, he pulled me close and whispered against my ear, "We made it. Forever starts now." I smiled through happy tears. "Forever," I echoed, and it felt so real. Days turned into months, months into years. Every moment seemed to shine. Breakfasts together, walks in the evening, his laughter echoing in the house we made our own. The walls felt warm, filled with pictures, memories, and the kind of love you only read about in books. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night, just to watch him sleep. His face so peaceful, his arm draped around me as if he was afraid I'd slip away. In those moments I thought, this is it. This is my happily ever after. But life, I would soon learn, has a way of twisting stories. Fairy tales end at the kiss, the wedding, the promise of forever. They don't tell you what happens when forever begins to break, when cracks spread through the perfect picture. Back then, I didn't see the shadows waiting at the edge of my joy. I only saw the light, the laughter, the endless promises. I didn't know that happily ever after had an ending too. The first year of our marriage felt like a dream I didn't want to wake up from. Everything we did together carried a kind of magic, like even the smallest routines were painted with love. We didn't need grand gestures, though he was always good at those too. Sometimes it was enough that he poured me tea in the morning, or that he left his jacket on my chair so I wouldn't feel cold. Everywhere I looked, I saw his care. He never let me feel alone, never let me question if I was loved. I thought this is what forever is supposed to feel like. One evening, after a long day, I came home to find him cooking in the kitchen. He was wearing an apron, his hair messy, and the smell of burnt bread filled the room. I laughed, leaning against the doorway. "You're going to set the house on fire," I teased. He turned with a sheepish grin. "I was trying to make it special. A proper dinner for us." I walked over, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "It's already special because it's you." He looked at me then, with that softness in his eyes that always melted me. "I promised you forever, and I meant it. I don't care how many burnt meals it takes, I'll make you happy." His words stayed with me long after that night. He never missed a chance to remind me that forever was real, that our love was unbreakable. When I doubted myself, he was there with gentle hands and quiet reassurance. "You're enough," he'd say, brushing hair from my face. "You'll always be enough for me." And I believed him. There were nights we'd sit on the balcony wrapped in blankets staring at the stars. I'd lean against his shoulder and he'd point at the sky. "See that one?" he'd ask, pointing to the brightest star. "That's ours. Even when the world ends, that light will still be shining, just like us." I smiled every time, even when I teased him about being dramatic. Deep down, I loved the way he dreamed, the way he made everything feel bigger than life. We made plans together, where we'd travel, what kind of house we'd buy next, how many children we might have. His eyes lit up whenever he spoke about the future, as if he could already see it happening. "I want our kids to grow up seeing what real love looks like," he told me once. "I want them to know that happily ever after isn't just a story." I squeezed his hand, my heart swelling. "Then we'll show them." And for a while, it truly felt like we could. But even in the middle of joy, small cracks began to form. Tiny ones that I ignored at first. Sometimes he came home later than usual, brushing it off as work. Sometimes his phone buzzed and he silenced it quickly, smiling too casually when I asked who it was. I told myself not to worry. He loves me. He promised forever. One night I asked softly, "We'll always be like this, won't we?" He cupped my face with both hands, looking deep into my eyes. "Always. Nothing could ever change that." His voice was steady, his touch warm, and I wanted to believe it more than anything. But in the silence of the night, when he drifted off to sleep, I lay awake wondering why his words felt heavier than before. Maybe forever wasn't as simple as I thought. Maybe promises weren't always shields against reality, but I shook the thought away, burying it deep inside. I refused to let doubt spoil the beauty we had built. After all, he was still my husband, my love, my best friend. The man who once caught my book on the street and caught my heart along with it. He was the man who whispered forever under the stars, who held my hand at the altar, who kissed me like I was his whole world. That had to mean something. So I smiled brighter, loved harder, and held on to every promise as if it was my lifeline. Because I needed to believe that happily ever after was real, that ours would never break. What I didn't know then was that even the strongest promises can bend under the weight of silence. Even forever can begin to slip away when no one notices the shadows creeping in. And soon I would notice. Too soon. The first real crack showed itself on an ordinary Tuesday. I had cooked dinner, his favorite pasta, and waited for him at the table. The clock ticked past 7, then 8, then 9. My calls went unanswered. By the time he finally walked through the door, close to midnight, I was sitting on the couch with the food cold on the table. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose, and he looked more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though my heart was racing. He rubbed his eyes and sighed. "Work. Meetings dragged on. I didn't want to bother you." I nodded slowly, searching his face. Something felt different. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. "You could have at least sent a message," I said softly. He glanced at me, guilt flickering for a moment, then disappearing. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'll do better." I wanted to believe him, and for a while I did, but the late nights became frequent. Sometimes he would come home smelling faintly of perfume I didn't own, and when I asked, he brushed it off with a tired laugh. "You're imagining things," he said once, kissing my forehead. "You know I only have eyes for you." And though his words were sweet, a seed of doubt had been planted inside me. One evening I found myself standing by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, waiting for him again. Hours passed and loneliness pressed down on me. I thought of our promises, our vows, our forever. Was this what forever looked like? Empty plates, cold rooms, and me whispering to the dark? When he finally came home, I tried to bring it up. "We don't spend time together anymore," I said quietly. "I miss us." He dropped his bag with a sigh, his tone sharper than usual. "I'm working hard for us, for our future. Can't you see that?" Tears burned my eyes, but I forced myself to nod. "I do, I don't want to lose what we have." He pulled me into his arms, and for a brief moment it felt like old times. "You'll never lose me," he whispered. "We're forever, remember?" But even as I held him, I wondered why forever suddenly felt so fragile. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to convince myself things were fine. I cooked his favorite meals, left him little notes like he used to leave me, tried to laugh at his tired jokes. Sometimes he smiled back, sometimes he seemed far away, lost in thoughts he didn't share. One Saturday while cleaning, I found a lipstick mark on the inside of his shirt collar. My chest tightened, my fingers trembling as I held the fabric. When I asked him about it later, he chuckled, brushing it off. Probably from someone at work leaning too close. Don't overthink, love. His casual dismissal hurt more than the mark itself. For the first time, I didn't believe him. But I didn't argue. Instead, I swallowed the pain and smiled, because I didn't know how to face the truth. At night, lying beside him, I stared at the ceiling, wondering when the warmth between us had turned into distance. He slept soundly, his back slightly turned, and I lay awake with questions that had no answers. I thought back to the boy who once caught my book, the man who whispered forever under the stars, the husband who kissed me at the altar. Where had he gone? Or maybe, where had we gone? I tried to fight for us. I suggested trips, dinners, walks like we used to take. Sometimes he agreed, but he was always distracted, checking his phone, rushing back to his world that no longer seemed to include me. One night I finally whispered, "Do you still love me?" He turned, startled, his eyes wide. "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" I looked away, my voice breaking. "Because it doesn't feel like it anymore." Silence filled the room. He didn't answer right away, and that silence screamed louder than any words. Finally, he pulled me close and muttered, "You're imagining things again. Don't let your insecurities ruin what we have." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just insecurity. It was reality. The cracks in our castle were growing wider, and no matter how much I tried to patch them with love, they were breaking us apart. I wanted to believe in happily ever after, but for the first time I wondered if ours was already ending. It started with the whispers. Not voices I heard in my head, but whispers from others, friends, neighbors, even strangers who glanced too long. Small comments that carried heavy meanings. One afternoon, while out for coffee with my friend Sana, she leaned across the table, her voice cautious. "I saw him the other night," she said. I smiled. "At the office?" She hesitated. "No, at a restaurant. With someone." A woman. My heart skipped. I forced a laugh. Maybe it was a work dinner. Sana's eyes softened, filled with the pity I didn't want. "Maybe, I just thought you should know." The words stayed with me long after she left. My chest tightened with every replay. A woman. Dinner. Laughter. Not me. When he came home that night, I studied him carefully. His shirt smelled faintly of perfume again, and there was a smile lingering on his lips, a smile he hadn't given me in weeks. "How was work?" I asked, my voice trembling. He shrugged, loosening his tie. Busy as always. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to scream, demand answers, shake him until the truth spilled out. But instead I bit my tongue, afraid of what I might hear. Later that night, as he showered, his phone buzzed on the table. My hand hovered over it, shaking. I had never been the kind of wife to check his phone, but doubt clawed at me, begging for proof. Before I could decide, he walked back into the room, towel around his shoulders. His eyes flicked to the phone, then to me, and for the briefest moment I saw panic flash across his face. "Everything okay?" I asked softly. He smiled too quickly. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" I nodded, but the whisper inside me grew louder. He's hiding something. The days that followed felt heavier. He was often distracted, his phone glued to his hand. He laughed at messages I couldn't see, and when I asked, he brushed it off with a shake of his head. "Just work," he'd say, every single time. But work never made a man glow like that. Work never made him forget I was even in the room. At night, when he lay beside me, I could feel the distance like a wall between us. He held me less, kissed me less, touched me less. I tried to reach for him, but he slipped away, piece by piece, until I felt like I was holding on to smoke. One evening, I gathered all my courage. "Are you seeing someone else?" He froze, his eyes narrowing. "What?" My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "Just tell me the truth." For a long moment, he just stared at me, his jaw clenched. Then he laughed, cold and sharp. "You've really lost it, haven't you? You're paranoid, imagining things. Do you want to destroy our marriage with these stupid doubts?" Tears filled my eyes. "I don't want to destroy anything. I just want the truth." He stood, shaking his head, his voice rising. "There is no other woman. Stop listening to gossip. Stop letting your insecurities eat you alive." I flinched at the harshness in his tone, the stranger in his voice. He had never spoken to me like that before. When he slammed the bedroom door and left me alone, I curled into myself, sobbing silently. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the man who once whispered forever. But the whispers of doubt wouldn't leave me. The next day, while folding laundry, I found a receipt in his pocket. A dinner bill from a fancy restaurant I had never been to, 2 meals, expensive wine. The date was the same night Sana had mentioned. My hands shook as I held the slip of paper, my vision blurring. Proof. Quiet, undeniable proof. That night when he came home, I placed the receipt on the table. He froze, his eyes scanning it, then flicking up to me. For a moment, guilt flashed across his face, then quickly hardened. It was work, he said firmly. Stop making this into something it's not, I whispered, my voice breaking. But you don't take me to places like this anymore. He looked away. You're being dramatic. And just like that, he walked past me, leaving me standing there with my heart in pieces. The whispers grew louder after that. Every time his phone buzzed, every time he came home late, every time he smelled like a world I wasn't part of. The doubt consumed me, drowning me in questions I couldn't stop asking. I looked at our wedding photo on the wall, the two of us smiling, hands held, eyes full of love, and wondered how we had come to this. Forever had begun with promises. Now it was breaking with lies, and I couldn't silence the voice inside me anymore. The voice that whispered the truth I didn't want to hear. Happily ever after doesn't last forever. The night everything truly shattered was not filled with yelling or broken glass. It was quieter than that, colder, sharper, like a knife slipping between ribs without warning. I had spent the day preparing his favorite meal, hoping we could talk, hoping maybe we could find each other again. I set the table with candles, the soft glow filling the room. I wore the dress he once said made me look like magic. I wanted more than anything to bring us back to what we used to be. When he walked in, he barely noticed. His eyes were on his phone, his fingers busy tapping, his smile aimed at someone else in that small glowing screen. I made dinner, I said gently. He glanced up, offered a half smile. I'm not really hungry. Had a late lunch. The candles flickered, the warmth fading from the room. I swallowed hard. Can we talk then? Just talk. He set his phone down with a sigh, irritation already creeping into his expression. About what? About us, I whispered, his jaw tightened. What about us? My hands trembled as I pushed the words out. We're falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it unless you're honest with me. Are you? My voice cracked. Are you in love with someone else? Silence, heavy, suffocating silence. He didn't look at me right away. Instead, he rubbed the back of his neck, staring at the table as if the answer was written there. Please, I begged, tears stinging my eyes. Just tell me the truth. Finally, he looked up, and in his eyes, I saw what I had been dreading all along. Guilt, resignation, a truth he could no longer hide. I didn't mean for it to happen, he said softly. The world tilted. My knees felt weak, my chest hollow. So there is someone? He closed his eyes, nodding once. It's not what you think. It's complicated. I still love you. Don't. I cut him off, my voice trembling with pain. Don't say you love me while giving yourself to someone else. He reached across the table, but I pulled back, shaking my head. When? How long? A few months, he admitted, his voice low. I was lost. I didn't mean to hurt you. A broken laugh escaped me, bitter and raw. Didn't mean to. Every late night, every lie, every time you looked me in the eye and swore forever. You meant every single one of those choices. His shoulders slumped. Shame written all over him, but the damage was done. My crown, the love I had worn so proudly, the marriage I thought was untouchable, shattered in that moment. I stood, tears streaming down my face. You promised me forever. You promised me happily ever after. He rose too, his voice desperate now. I still want that. I still want us. I shook my head, my chest aching. Happily ever after doesn't come with lies. It doesn't come with betrayal. He reached for me, but I stepped back, my voice breaking. You didn't just break my trust. You broke me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He realized, maybe too late, that the woman standing in front of him was not the same one who had whispered yes to forever. She was broken, bleeding, drowning in a sea of shattered dreams. That night, I slept alone, not because he left, but because I couldn't bear to let him hold me anymore. The bed felt colder, emptier, like a grave for the love we once shared. I stared at the ceiling, remembering the way he had once whispered promises under the stars, the way he kissed me at the altar, the way he said forever like it was something real. Now, forever was a lie. A story that ended in betrayal. And though part of me still ached for him, still loved him, another part of me whispered a truth I could no longer ignore. The crown we built together had shattered, and no amount of glue could ever make it whole again. The castle of our love was crumbling, and I was standing in the ruins. The days after his confession blurred together. I moved through them like a ghost, carrying a heart that no longer felt like mine. Every corner of our house whispered reminders. The couch where we once curled up together, the kitchen where he laughed at his failed meals, the balcony where we counted stars. All of it felt hollow now, like props from a play that had ended. He tried to act normal. He brought flowers, cooked dinners, touched my hand as though his skin could erase the wound he had carved into me. But every gesture felt forced, desperate, dripping with guilt. One night I couldn't hold it in anymore. Why her? I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Don't do this. I need to know, I pressed, tears rising. Why wasn't I enough? Why did you go looking for someone else when you promised me forever? His face crumpled, and for a moment he looked smaller, weaker. It wasn't about you, it was me. I was empty, and she filled the space. The word stabbed deeper than any knife. Empty? I whispered. I gave you everything. My love, my trust, my whole self. How could you be empty? He covered his face with his hands. I don't know. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I want to fix it. I laughed bitterly, the sound breaking in the air. Fix it? You can't fix betrayal. You can't unbreak my heart. His eyes shone with tears, but I had none left. My tears had dried into silence, into anger, into a hollow ache that no apology could fill. That night I packed a small bag, not because I wanted to leave forever, but because I needed air, space to breathe away from the lies. He caught me by the door. Please don't go, he begged, his voice cracking. We can work through this. We can still have our forever. I shook my head, my throat tight. Forever already broke. You broke it the moment you chose her. He fell to his knees, clutching my hand. I'll let her go. I'll cut everything off. Just don't leave me. The sight of him like that should have softened me, but instead it filled me with sorrow, because he only begged when he feared losing me, not when he was sneaking away to someone else. I need time, I whispered, pulling my hand free. As I walked out, the night air hit my face, cool and sharp. I stood under the same stars we once claimed as ours, and for the first time, I didn't feel their magic. They looked distant, unreachable, like the love I once believed would last forever. At my sister's house, I cried into her arms, finally letting the pain spill out. He promised me forever, I sobbed. Why wasn't that enough? She stroked my hair, her voice steady. Because sometimes forever isn't real. Sometimes it's just words people say when they're too afraid to admit they can't keep them. Her words hurt, but they also settled something in me. Maybe forever wasn't meant to be trusted. Maybe happily ever after was just a chapter, not the whole book. Days turned into weeks. He called, texted, begged me to come home. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. Each time, his voice carried desperation, but I couldn't tell if it was for me or for the life we had built that he was terrified to lose. One night, he came to my sister's doorstep, his eyes red, his voice broken. I ended it, he said. She's gone. I only want you. I looked at him, the man who had once been my safe place, now the source of my deepest wound. It's too late, I whispered. He reached for me. Please don't say that. We can still rebuild. I shook my head, tears spilling. You can rebuild a house when it cracks, but when the foundation breaks, it all comes down. And you broke ours. His face crumbled, but I didn't stay to see more. I closed the door, leaning against it as sobs shook my body. In that moment, I knew our happily ever after had ended. Forever had broken, and I was left holding the shards. Silence became my closest companion. In the mornings, I woke to an emptiness I never imagined. His side of the bed was cold, untouched, yet I didn't miss his presence. I missed the man he used to be, the one who laughed with me in the rain, who whispered promises against my skin, who swore I was his only world. That man was gone, buried beneath lies I could never forget. At first, I thought the ache would fade. That time would soften the edges of my grief. But grief doesn't fade when the person who caused it keeps calling, keeps begging, keeps reminding you of what once was. He left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. I can't sleep without you. I ended it for good. Please believe me. I'll wait for you. Forever if I have to. Sometimes I listened. Sometimes I deleted them before they finished. But each message pulled at the fragile strings of my heart, strings I was trying so hard to untangle. One evening, I met him at the cafe where we first kissed. I don't know why. I told myself it was for closure, but deep down I wanted to see if even a spark of us remained. He looked tired, his face hollow, his hands trembling as he held his coffee. When his eyes met mine, they softened in a way that almost made me break. "You came," he said, relief flooding his voice. "I'm here to listen, not to stay," I answered, steady but quiet. He leaned forward. "I've been a fool. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I'm begging you. Give me a chance to prove myself again." My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to run into his arms, to erase the pain and pretend the betrayal never happened. But the larger part, the part carrying the scars, knew better. "You broke something in me," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Do you even understand what that means?" His eyes glistened. "I know I hurt you. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Tears stung my eyes. "But I don't want a life spent fixing what you destroyed. I wanted a life where you never had to." The cafe around us blurred as my vision filled with tears. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back, the distance between us heavier than the table separating us. That night I walked home under a sky heavy with clouds, realizing something I hadn't admitted before. Love wasn't enough, not when trust was gone. Love could ache, burn, even beg, but without trust it collapsed like a ruined castle. Days bled into weeks. I threw myself into small routines, helping my sister with her kids, reading late into the night, cooking meals too large for one. I laughed sometimes, though the laughter always ended in quiet tears. Healing wasn't a straight path. It was jagged, messy, filled with moments of strength and nights of weakness. And then, one morning, I found myself standing in front of our old house. The windows reflected a life I once believed would last forever. He opened the door when he saw me, his face lighting up with hope. "You came back," he breathed. I shook my head softly. "No, I came to say goodbye." His smile faltered. "Don't, please, we can't," I said firmly, though my heart cracked with every word. "I'll always remember what we had, but I'll never forget what you did, and I can't build forever on ruins." His shoulders sagged, his eyes hollowing into defeat. "So this is it?" I swallowed hard. "This is it." I walked away, my legs heavy, my chest burning, but with each step I felt something shift inside me. Not peace, not yet, but a strange kind of freedom. A freedom that came from choosing myself, even when it hurt. Later that night, I stood by the window at my sister's house watching the stars. They didn't look like promises anymore. They looked like reminders, distant, cold, yet eternal. And maybe that was enough. For the first time, I whispered to myself, happily ever after isn't real. But maybe living again is. And in the ruins of love, I found the smallest seed of hope. Life after goodbye was quieter than I imagined. At first, the silence pressed against me like a heavy blanket, smothering me with the echo of what once was. I missed the familiar sounds, the way his laughter filled a room, the way his footsteps comforted me at night. But slowly I learned that silence wasn't empty. It was space. Space I had never given myself before. I started with small things. I walked through the park alone, letting the wind play with my hair, listening to children laugh in the distance. I cooked meals for myself, adding flavors he never liked, eating them at my own pace without anyone watching. I even picked up sketching again, something I had abandoned when life became too crowded with us. At first, I thought of him with every stroke of my pencil, every bite of food, every quiet step through the park. But gradually, the memories loosened their grip. They didn't vanish, but they stopped ruling me. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at a cafe with a book, sunlight streaming through the window. I realized it was the first time in months I hadn't thought of him all day. The realization startled me, then comforted me. Healing didn't arrive like lightning. It crept in softly like dawn after a long night. My sister noticed it too. One evening, she sat beside me on the porch sipping tea, You look lighter, she said, studying me carefully. Do I? I asked, a small smile tugging at my lips. She nodded. It's like you're finally breathing again. Her words warmed me. For so long I had carried guilt, as if leaving him meant I was weak or selfish or ungrateful for the love we once had. But here I was breathing, and it felt like the most courageous thing I had ever done. One day he showed up again. Not at my sister's house this time, but at the park where I sat sketching. His eyes searched mine, but I didn't feel the same pull. I just wanted to see you, he said softly. I closed my sketchbook, calm settling over me. And now you have, he hesitated. You seem different. I am, I admitted. I'm learning to live without the weight of what you did, without the chains of what we promised but couldn't keep. His lips trembled as if he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Instead, he nodded, a sad smile forming. I hope you find happiness. For the first time, I believed him. And for the first time, I truly wished him well. Not because I wanted him back, but because letting go also meant letting go of anger. When he walked away, I felt no urge to chase him. My heart ached, but it didn't shatter. That was when I knew I had survived the worst of it. Weeks passed. The world felt bigger, brighter, even in its ordinary moments. I laughed with friends, rediscovered old songs, danced barefoot in my room. I started dreaming again. Not about castles or forever promises, but about small joys, quiet mornings, adventures I could create on my own. One evening, I stood before the mirror, studying my reflection. My eyes still carried shadows, but there was light in them too. A kind of strength I had never seen before. I touched the glass, whispering, "You're enough." The freedom I found wasn't the one I had once dreamed of. It wasn't the freedom of a perfect love or a flawless forever. It was the freedom of choosing myself, of knowing that even if the story didn't end in happily ever after, it didn't end in despair either. It ended in me, and for the first time, that was more than enough. The seasons changed while I was learning to live again. Summer gave way to autumn, the air turning crisp, the leaves falling in golden showers. Each day I felt a little stronger, a little more myself. The woman who once believed forever was written in stone had been broken, but in the cracks, something new had grown. One afternoon I returned to the old bookstore where he and I used to wander on weekends. At first the sight of it squeezed my chest, but then I stepped inside, breathing in the smell of paper and dust. This time it wasn't our place anymore. It was mine. I ran my fingers along the spines of books, pausing at a title we once joked about. The memory surfaced, but it didn't sting like before. Instead, it felt like watching a movie I had once loved, knowing the ending had changed. A little boy ran past me, giggling, his mother calling after him. I smiled, realizing that life didn't stop because love ended. The world went on, and so did I. Later that evening, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker like fireflies. For so long, I thought my story was over the moment he betrayed me. I thought there was no life beyond the heartbreak. But here I was, breathing, living, dreaming again. My sister joined me, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "You've come so far," she whispered. I nodded, tears brimming. I thought forever was the only way to be happy. But maybe happiness isn't forever. Maybe it's in moments. She squeezed my hand. And those moments can be yours again. They already are. Her words sank deep, settling into the quiet spaces of my heart. I realized then that love didn't define me. Heartbreak didn't end me. I was still here, whole, alive, capable of writing new chapters. Weeks later, I took a trip alone, just a short one, to a coastal town where the sea roared against the cliffs and the sky stretched endlessly. I walked barefoot on the sand, the wind tangling my hair, the salt clinging to my skin. For the first time, I felt small but not lost. I felt part of something larger, something endless. As the waves kissed my ankles, I whispered to the sea, "Thank you." Not to him, not to the pain, but to the journey that brought me here. Because even though I had lost what I once thought was everything, I had found something greater, myself. On the last night of my trip, I sat on the shore, watching the sun melt into the horizon. Couples held hands nearby, children chased the tide, laughter carried through the air. And instead of longing, I felt peace. My story didn't end with happily ever after. But it also didn't end in ruins. It ended here, in a place where I could begin again. I thought of him one last time, not with anger, not with longing, but with quiet acceptance. He had been a chapter, beautiful at times, devastating at others, but just a chapter, not the whole book. The tide rose higher, washing away the footprints I had left behind. I smiled softly, knowing I was ready to leave my own ruins behind too. When I returned home, I wrote the final words in my journal. Happily ever after is a story we tell ourselves. But real life? It continues after ever after, and sometimes that's where the truest happiness waits. I closed the book, placed it on the shelf, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free, not because forever had survived, but because I had. If you like the story, subscribe for more interesting stories.